If there's one thing that we can all agree on, it's that we hate disappointments. Whether it be thinking you did well on a test only to be brought back a failing grade, confessing to your crush only for them to tell you that they felt sick in your presence, or maybe you yourself being a disappointment to your parents. With that being said, where's my epic dragon battle, John? I feel betrayed. This shit does not happen. Okay, well, we get something like that towards the end of the book, but I wanted more. I needed more, given this cover. Look at it. Do you not see how cool and epic this looks? Why do you think I read this book, John? It's definitely not because of what's written on the back. Nobody's reading that shit. It's because of the fucking cover. Now, I know I might be sounding a little harsh here, but trust me, I still love this book a lot. I think what John Gwynne was able to accomplish throughout its 470 pages was truly impressive. I just think I took the cover too literally, because if anything, it's more of an indication that this is a tale of epic proportions, and that it is. John Gwynne definitely delivered on that aspect. Now, if there's one thing in this world that's more rare than me flirting with women, it's reading a book. And no, I'm not counting light novels. I love ReZero, but I'm talking about real books here. And this is pretty thick, okay? Like, let me put this side by side. It's got more girth and length. I don't know. Okay, I can't land on properly, but you get what I mean. This is a thick boy, okay? Now, fair warning, because I don't expect anybody to have actually read this book on the channel, because this is not a book-oriented channel, and I can't talk about a book without talking about a book. So, you've been warned, there are mild spoilers. I will go into more detail later on, but I will let you guys know when those major bombshells are being dropped. I guess I already did drop one with this shit not happening, but I'm more of a messiah in this case because you won't go into this book like me expecting this shit to happen. So I really saved you guys a bunch of time. So without further ado, let's talk about John Gwynne's Shadow of the Gods. So this is a Norse-inspired fictional tale that takes place in the land of Vigrid, the battle plane. And it's kind of fitting given the current setting that One Piece is in Elbaf right now. We're also in a Norse-inspired setting. So it was kind of fitting that I got to read this at the same time. But either way, Vigrid is called the battle plane because it takes place in a post-war setting after the Battle of the Gods. Essentially, 400-300 years ago, there was a big feud amongst all the gods, being these gargantuan beasts that you see in mythology, one of them being here on the cover. This is Likrifa, the dragon. And then there were a bunch of these guys, huge gargantuan beasts that had this all-out war. There was so much bloodshed, and we're basically taking the perspective of the humans after the fact, after the war is finished. So yeah, I think it's safe to say that these humans really did not take too kindly to the gods teabagging and having a whole ass Fortnite Battle Royale session at their house. Honestly, more than anything, I'm surprised that anybody survived that event, because the way they described it, bro, that shit was like Ragnarok. Like, you have all these gods. You have Snaka, the big ass snake whose fucking skull is used as a location in the story. Actually, wait. I think there's a good visual indication. I think there was a map here, yeah. So, I don't know if you can see. This shit, you see this? This thing that looks like a mountain? That's fucking, that's Snaka. That's the god. That's his skull right there. Over here. So yeah, his whole entire body stretches across the fucking map. And this is just one of the gods. You have a dragon. You have Orna the eagle. You have Rotir the fucking rat. You have Ulfrir the wolf. All these beings just going head to head against one another. How did the humans survive this, bro? And it's not just the gods themselves. There was also tainted beings, which are basically humans or half humans that carry the blood of these gods. And they carry on some of their abilities as well. So it wasn't just the gods themselves, also their children going into war. So after this battle that was almost as intense as my diarrhea yesterday, they basically left Vigrid divided. Everything was in shambles. The place is just an island of violence, essentially. And there's nobody bringing about unity to the region, aside from one person, and that is Queen Helka. But she's doing it in a very authoritarian kind of way, where she's going around these different places and making them join her faction, either giving them a choice or not. I will talk a little bit more about my theories on that. But essentially, she is creating her own empire and making Vigrid her empire. Obviously, not everybody likes that. Obviously, I've been rambling for a bit now and I haven't even talked about the main characters of the book. That just goes to show how well John Gwynne has constructed the world here. Because I was immersed into it almost immediately. And if you like what you heard, then you might want to check out this book because it really does have some amazing world building, some amazing characters. I'm just super impressed by how fast I grew to love just the setting in general. So Shadow of the Gods does something really interesting where you follow the story of three separate main characters instead of just one. So chapter by chapter you will be shifting perspectives a lot and picking up on a different story. Now this does have its upsides but it does have its downsides as well, so it might not be everybody's cup of joe. For one, it takes a bit of time for the story to get rolling because obviously you're juggling so many things at the same time. You're having three separate storylines, so the beginning is gonna be slow. I think Varg by far had the best start and he never really had a stopping point where things got boring. But Orca and especially Elvar, I found myself having a harder time getting invested into their character arcs. By the halfway point, that's obviously going to change. The second half of the book is so fucking good. But the first half definitely had pacing issues in my opinion. And number two, there are just so many different characters because each storyline has its own ensemble. It has its own cast. So you're gonna just sometimes get lost in the sauce here and completely forget who was who, where you were the last time you left off, and where they were at. It just got a little confusing sometimes, but the author does do a good job of differentiating most of the characters. But sometimes you will be like, wait, were you that guy or were you that guy? Because there, you can't put a name to a face in a book because obviously you're imagining it, and then you sometimes just forget descriptions. If there's nothing big that differentiates each character, especially since they're Vikings and all of them kind of have a similar personality, it is hard to remember everyone. Especially if you're not reading it all in one go. Like, I don't know who on earth is insane enough to sit through 470 pages in one sitting. Like, if you can do that, that is seriously an impressive skill. Like, I'd be whacking my hammer sometimes for that long, but reading a book, that's outside of my league. I tip my fedora to you, sir. That is seriously impressive. But the not remembering characters thing is part of a larger issue, really. I think the biggest problem with Shadow of the Gods is that because there are so many characters, the author really relies on likable personality traits to make you care about them, which is, like, it's alright, it's not a bad thing necessarily, but they're lacking that bit of depth to give them that final push to be an extraordinary and really memorable character. On the flip side though, this story structure does allow for more creative liberty or agency because you're not just restricted to that one storyline, you have three separate ones, so you can make completely different, well, not completely different, you're still restricted by the rules of the world and the lore, but you're still able to make three different compelling stories. And it was a new experience for me. I hadn't really experienced something like this, so it's a very much needed breath of fresh air. Finally, we can talk about the main characters of the book. Holy shit. Okay, so firstly, we have Orca, who is one of the most legendary warriors of Vigrid, who chose to settle down and live a life of peace. But she gets forced back into picking up the mantle of blood and violence. Sound familiar? Yeah, she's basically the John Wick of this book, except he traded his guns for a farm life instead. Then you have Elvar, a warrior of the famed Battlegrim that's seeking to engrave her name in the annals of history. And finally, Varg, a slave that's seeking revenge for the murder of his sister, who then finds solace in the presence of the Bloodsworn, his newfound family. Three casts of characters, three sets of lore. Bro, your brain's gonna be feeling like it's doing homework by the end of this book. But stick with it, because once this train leaves the station, chef's kiss. All three of their stories were super interesting, but by far my favorite one was Varg, so let's talk about him first. Now I'm just gonna be straight up, I'm a complete sucker when it comes to newfound family plotlines. It's just something about it, man. And the one in this book is no different. Varg's story is so good. So, in the beginning, we learn that Varg is an escaped slave who murdered his master, and now others are on the run chasing him down. So we see him bruised, battered up, hungry. He arrives at this port town looking like he's just lost a fight against a fucking wood chipper. But it's here that you begin to see just how descriptive and well thought out Gwynne's words are. You actually feel like you're in the moment. You can taste what Varg is tasting. You can see what he's seeing. You can just picture the whole vibe of the area so well. Gwynne just does an amazing job setting the foundations for the setting that the characters are going to be in. But I digress. Varg soon learns that they have a Sather Witch, the Bloodsworn do, and he needs one to perform an Akal, which is essentially this ritual that will let him scry into the past and see visions of who murdered his sister, so that he can get his revenge, obviously. Now, the problem here is he needs to join the Bloodsworn to be able to use the assets of the Sather Witch. Now, how do you join the Bloodsworn, you may ask? Well, you gotta beat their most elite warrior, Einar Half-Troll. If his epithet is anything to go by, you're kind of fucked to begin with. The dude is built like a fridge. He's like 2 people tall, or 2 men tall. So, spoiler alert. Yeah, Pew. Varg kind of got his ass kicked. He was thrown out like a used condom. Dude stood no chance. Well, he actually did stand a chance. He put up a pretty good fight, actually. And he did scar Einar Half-Troll. So kudos to him there. But sometimes you just gotta take the L and eat some dirt before you level up. Now after he got the good old 1-2 Burger King combo, Varg wakes up outside of town in a ditch. And he basically makes a run for it. Because the people chasing him have started to catch up. And they did catch up to him. And right when they put him through the ringer, yeah, as if he wasn't getting enough shit already, he got shit on again. And he almost got caught, but right in the nick of time, when his back was right against the wall, the Bloodsworn arrived. There to rescue him. Why? Well, who knows? Well, there's a good reason why, but we'll talk about that now because it is spoilers. But after that, he joins their crew because he was saved and he feels indebted to them. He is a very honorable person, and I really like that about Varg. It's a good trait to have and makes him really likable. Now, he joins their squad, and basically, he's not really a Bloodsworn yet, but he is a trainee. And now with his slave life behind him, he trains in the way of the warrior, in the way of the Bloodsworn, hoping to one day be worthy of that title so he gets to use the powers of the Sather Witch to accomplish his goal. Now, what I love about this particular plotline is that he never intended to be a real Bloodsworn, only in name, because he just needed the powers of the Sather Witch. But as the story progressed, he found himself becoming more immersed into their culture, or more immersed into his little family here that he's making, because these are the first people that have started to see him as a comrade, as somebody that's trustworthy, as somebody that they can rely on, and that he can rely on in turn. Because throughout his whole life, he was nothing but a thrall, just a slave, and the only person that really cared about him was his sister. So it's just so heartwarming to watch him open up to others, be open to more friendships, to just develop as a person and not as a thing that's supposed to be thrown to the wayside and not cared about. But the best part of Varg's storyline is how his growth comes into conflict with his original goal, which was to seek vengeance for his sister's murder. Because now he's forced to choose. Does he stay true to his word and seek that vengeance, but risk losing everything he has in the present, or does he stay with the Bloodsworn? Varg is just such a well-written character, man, and it just gets even better later in the book. Okay, I have to talk about this, so major spoiler warning here. You've been warned. Skip to this time if you don't want to hear what I have to say here. Alright? Okay, so later in the book, we find out that the Bloodsworn are all tainted, including Varg. Like, holy shit, dude, that plot twist was fucking insane. And it's not like it came out of nowhere. There were bits and pieces sprinkled all throughout the book that was the case. And it recontextualized what happened in the beginning. Because the Bloodsworn weren't just looking for new recruits to include into the ranks. Going against Einar, only tainted beings would be able to put up a fight against him. They were weeding out who was tainted and who was not, amassing a group of tainted individuals. Just a reminder, tainted beings in this world are basically treated as less than slaves. So they're basically amassing a group of a family. They're basically amassing a real family. And that sense of family that Varg was feeling is amplified even further because these are actually his people. Like, he's tainted with them. It's so fucking good. Okay, major spoiler talk done now. Let's talk about the two other characters, Orca and Elvar. Now, I'm not gonna get into too much more detail like I did with Vark here, but let's talk about Orca first. She is basically the John Wick of this book, and if you don't believe me, let me explain one of the scenes to you, okay? I'm not gonna get into details for spoiler's sake, but she basically tracks somebody down into a tavern. So, she walks into the tavern just casually, slits somebody's throat, throws him to the side. Everybody's like, what the fuck is going on? They all get up and they all charge at her. She has no plans here. She just has one goal in mind, and that's to kill that one person, okay? So they fight and blah blah blah. She kills basically everybody. And then they take the fight outside. They crash through the wall or something. And then at some point, she's basically surrounded by a dozen different Vikings with weapons in hand. She's like, they're encircling her, okay? And what does she do? What does she do? She just says, so who wants to die first? Bro! Bro! And the person she's hunting down, like that one individual, is already like 10 men worth of strength. Like, what? Like, she is in this impossibly dire situation, but she does not give one fuck. She is so savage. I love her. She's such a great character. There is one scene with her though that is pretty fucking cringe. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It was it was pretty bad. I can't believe like that was included into the story. Okay, so anybody that's read it probably knows what I'm referring to. But there's this one scene where she's basically has this major event happen within her storyline. I'm not gonna go into details for spoilers, but basically some major event happens. And the situation is supposed to be taken super seriously. Like the tension there is thicker than a bowl of oatmeal, okay? And she stands there. And I kid you not, verbatim, she drops the I am the night. I am vengeance. I am death. What? What were you cooking? What were you cooking? Like, I swear to God, I stood there after I read that. I was buffering like a YouTube video. I had, like, how are you? What the fuck is that, bro? Like, I don't even know what to say. That was so, like, trash. Like, she just copy pasted Batman's IMDb page. Like, it was so on the nose. I'm like starting like Porky Pig, trying to just picture how someone can write that in. But thankfully, that's the only moment in the book that's really like that. After that, there's nothing that bad ever again. Moving on to our final character, though, we have Elvar. Now, I mentioned before that I had a harder time connecting with her story at the beginning, at least, because in the beginning, she's hunting other people down, and it kind of makes her seem like the bad person. Because honestly, like, the people she was hunting down in the beginning of the book, I felt more connected to their story and their pleas rather than hers. But the story does pick up towards the second half where we learn more about her family relations and other factions come in. But her story is more focused on the sense of adventure. You go against fucking leviathans in the ocean, trolls, 10 years that are gnawing at your teeth, which are like these troll things with bat wings. And then especially the showdown at the very end of the book. I'm not gonna go into spoilers again, but holy shit, what happens there? If you know, you know. Like, that shit was amazing, but the first half of the book is kind of wonky with her story. Like, even by the end, I never really felt connected to her specifically. It was mostly her dynamics with other characters that was really interesting. So I feel like the author could cook a bit more with her character in the second book at least. But the first one, it was alright. She wasn't bad by any means, but she wasn't particularly good either. But yeah, that's about all I have to say about Shadow of the Gods. I think that in the second book, it's gonna pick up a lot. It's gonna be a lot more fast-paced, especially with how things left off at the end of this book. But the foundation was already laid in this one. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to the second one. I don't know when I'll get to it because, I mean, this is pretty time consuming, but I am planning to read it at some point. I'm really looking forward to finishing the Bloodsworn saga. I'm hooked. So, John Gwynne, good job. So yeah, overall, I rate Shadow of the Gods an 8 out of 10. It had a slow start. Elvar's story was kind of wonky at times. I couldn't exactly connect to her character that well. But aside from that, I enjoyed pretty much every part of this book. It was really, really fun to read. Also, another note, I just forgot to mention this completely, but there is this word that the author spams like every other page. It's thought cage. And he's basically just replacing that word with think. Why can't you just say think? Like, it's so weird. I know you want to have your own, like, dialect for Viking speech, but it's just so weird how they keep spamming the word thought cage. It just sounds so stupid. I'm sorry. But anyway, that's just a minor nitpick. Overall, yeah, love this book, and I'm really looking forward to continuing it. If you like this video, like it, subscribe, all that jazz, and I will see you all in the next video. See ya!